Hey everyone, I wanted to wait until the weekend was over before posting this because I wanted to give you all a chance to watch Black Adam. But now that plenty of you have, I wanted to make it official that I am back as Superman. And the image you see on this post and what you saw in Black Adam are just a very small taste of things to come. So there's a lot to be thankful for, and I'll get to that in time, but I want to thank you guys most of all. Thank you for your support and thank you for your patience. I promise it will be rewarded.
I know what you did. You're a damn terrorist. All right, just get the hell out of here. Huh? I got a goddamn campaign.
Hey, the one thing you do care about. Okay, then I quit as your son.
Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and yet again we have to talk about DC movies or the DCEU or whatever you want to call it, and the fact that Henry Cavill, who it actually turns out is not returning as Superman despite confirming his return literally 7 to 8 weeks ago during the release of Black Adam. Now just beware of any spoilers regarding all movies or television series within the DC cinematic universe when going into this overall video. So then, on to the bombshell news that was dropped on the early hours of the 15th of December 2022, when Henry Cavill announced via Instagram that he will no longer be playing Superman after being told by the studio Warner Bros. Discovery to announce his return back in October that there was a changing of the guard following the hiring of both James Gunn and Peter Safran as co-leads of DC movies and animation, which was announced in November this year. Cavill wishes them the best of luck for the future. So nothing wrong with this post, and it's very cordial and very respectful, and to be fair, Cavill has always conducted himself very professionally and quite smartly when it comes to his use on social media. Now there are so many dynamics and ramifications regarding this news, but we'll focus on the timeline announcement first. And to be honest, it's an absolute clown show in my opinion. Regardless of what character or franchise is involved, you've just announced that the actor is returning to the role, and then literally 7 to 8 weeks later, you then announce that it's not happening. Now in certain circumstances, if there was an accident or fatal injury, then this would be acceptable. But obviously that wasn't the case. And it just makes everybody involved looking absolutely incompetent and disorganised. But of course, this is something that Warner Bros. In terms of DC has always been. And it's always been this way probably since the release of Batman vs Superman back in 2016. Now when Cavill was announced as returning, I said at the time it must have been substantial and potentially long term, as the actor wouldn't have taken the time to come out on Instagram and doing interviews afterwards talking about coming back if he wasn't. Purely because it would make him look foolish if he's saying he's going to do something and then not end up doing it. Then there was the factor of him leaving the Netflix Witcher series after its 3rd season. Now whilst it's been alluded to that he wasn't perhaps happy with the direction of the story that was being taken, it's clear as day that his decision to leave was influenced by his return to Superman. Now we all know he wants to be a cinematic movie star, but to be fair, The Witcher was a regular payday and he was favoured very well in his role as Geralt. He had a very good connection with fans, so logically he wouldn't really leave that position unless there was something far bigger on the table. So as professional as Henry Cavill has been throughout his career, we do have to ask the question, did him and his agent act accordingly in negotiating the right deal for him? In any discussions or negotiations with Warner Bros., I would have expected Henry Cavill to get something ironclad, to be certain that regardless of what happens, that he would be guaranteed a full-on standalone movie in terms of playing Superman. This is where all the discourse and confusion began with. If you remember, Warner Bros. Had a cameo appearance of Superman back at the end of Shazam, and in the end that cameo had to be headless because Henry Cavill had refused to take on the appearance. The ongoing contention was that Warner Bros. Clearly wanted to move on with a new Superman, but Henry Cavill was still owed one more appearance on his contract. Now obviously Warner Bros. Tried to complete that contract with a cameo appearance, but Henry Cavill stood firm as he wanted a more standalone Superman story. So when I look back at this news, I just asked the question as to why didn't Henry Cavill negotiate himself in a position where he was guaranteed a full-on standalone Superman appearance? What exactly were the terms of him appearing back in Black Adam? Did Warner Brothers screw Henry Cavill during the negotiations, or did Henry screw himself? I guess we'll find out over time. We then have to talk about Black Adam itself, and this announcement really exposes Dwayne Johnson and his management team, in my personal opinion. Throughout all of the promotion for Black Adam, they pushed so hard in terms of going forward with a new era of the DC universe, how they had to fight for so many years to get Henry back in the role as Superman. Well, it turns out they didn't quite fight hard enough, with only managing to get 5 seconds worth of a cameo at the end of the movie. So all that talk about Cavill's Superman was really just a big circle jerk, just to promote Black Adam. So really it was a cruel manipulation by Dwayne Johnson and his team just to further their own particular movie. And for all of the promotion, you really could feel the desperation as Dwayne Johnson was making all of these appearances, and they were trying all of these maneuvers, just doing anything to force the movie through onto big box office success. This was bolstered by the huge pressure of having that overblown $200 million budget for the movie. They really overestimated the presence of Cavill's Superman, thinking his involvement would garner all of the traction on social media, especially from the Snyder fan base, and that traction would equate to big box office numbers. Didn't they know that they wouldn't get a solo Superman movie? What about all of the desire to have Black Adam fight Superman? Again, in terms of contract negotiations, why didn't they work harder with Warner Brothers to guarantee that there would be further appearances of Henry Cavill as Superman, so they could provide fans with the promise of the big battle between the two characters? Surely they wouldn't go through all of this just for 5 seconds of Henry Cavill's Superman. Did Dwayne Johnson really care about Superman, or did he just care about making box office success for Black Adam? I would certainly say that it was the latter. We then talk about James Gunn, and I've seen the typical online outburst following this announcement, primarily from the Snyder fans, claiming Gunn has taken their universe away from them and that they won't ever get to see their story completed. But none of this is really Gunn's fault. Cavill's negotiations to return were nothing to do with him. When his appointment was announced, I said at the time that James Gunn would want to reboot the universe with a clean slate so he could infuse his own style, which very much clashes against that of Zack Snyder. So he was likely never going to employ Cavill regardless of whether he appeared in Black Adam or not. And shortly after this announcement, James Gunn recently confirmed in a tweet stating that they will be going with a younger reporter, Clark Kent, in Metropolis. And this makes sense, as despite Cavill still looking youthful and in great shape, he is 39 years old. And going forward, James Gunn would want a younger actor who could play the role for at least 10 years in multiple solo films and Justice League team-ups. And I just look more at Zaslav and the overall organisation of DC. Why get Henry back, hinting at something substantial, if you already knew James Gunn would want to start afresh with his own universe? Surely it would have been more ideal to get James Gunn, Henry Cavill, Dwayne Johnson all together in one big room and hash out all the plans in terms of how you were proposing to go forward with your new universe with both Black Adam and Superman involved. And having all come together, how much more impactful would it have been if all 3 individuals made a big massive appearance at Comic-Con announcing their big plans for the future? That in itself would have garnered a far more bigger support from the fan base and also instilled a lot more confidence in the universe going forward. Now, some people have said that this decision was determined by the box office failure of Black Adam, but I can't believe that you are truly deciding the fate of Superman on Black Adam's box office. You surely must have had some contingency plan for Henry's role just in case Black Adam failed. And the fact that he only had 5 seconds in a cameo, you couldn't really have expected him to have that much impact in terms of the overall film's performance. But as we've all known for so many years now, Warner Brothers has had a complete lack of belief or commitment to Superman as a character, which is why we are in this mess to begin with. We've known from the previous regime that they didn't want to keep Henry Cavill, so ideally they should have just paid off his contract and started again with a new version. They did this, of course, with casting Robert Pattinson as Batman so shortly after Ben Affleck was involved in the role, but as we all know, Batman is the treasured cash cow of DC and they will do whatever it takes to make sure that that character remains prolific. Sadly, they don't have the same passion or desire for Superman, which baffles all rational thinking, as we all know, Superman is the true heart of the DC universe. So as usual with Warner Brothers, this whole thing is a mess. I recently tweeted that this represents perhaps the biggest mishandling of an iconic franchise or IP. I've stated in multiple videos that if you get these DC characters right with the same attention that we saw with the MCU, the DC cinematic universe would actually surpass the MCU in terms of both profile and commercial popularity. I'm fully convinced of that. But on the one hand, I suppose if we didn't have it before, we for sure now have true confirmation from this announcement that this is indeed the end of the Snyderverse, 100% without question. Now, for me personally, we already reached that stage with the massive box office failure of the Justice League in 2017, and of course the decision to move forward with a Matt Reeves Batman that was separate from the universe was the other big indicator that the Snyderverse no longer had any longevity inside it. So the next question that we ask is, what will happen to the likes of Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, and all other cast members involved in the DC universe going forward? And I suppose that speculation is perhaps for another video, as is what will James Gunn plan forward for his new iteration of Superman. But in terms of Henry Cavill, I suppose this is very unfortunate for his career, but it's not the end. He does have other roles in the pipeline. He has the Matthew Vaughn spy thriller Argyle, which is already complete. He was already confirmed for the Highlander reboot. He's also involved in a new Guy Ritchie film coming up. And he does have a certain popularity with fans, and as I mentioned before, he does conduct himself in a professional manner. So he will get future roles, and I suppose there's still the slight potential that he could eventually be cast as James Bond, which I personally believe would be the far more suitable role for him. But at the same time, it does represent very much of a missed opportunity. I've always stated that Henry Cavill completely looks like Superman. I don't think anybody can dispute that. But he just needed the right Superman material in order to give audiences that true modern day iconic Superman. We've had recent iterations of the character whilst not having a physical build of Henry Cavill. Other actors have been provided with far more what we would call quintessential Superman elements, therefore making them much more appropriate in terms of an interpretation of the character. And I truly believe if Henry Cavill had the same passion and material given to him by studios, that he could have indeed have been a truly great Superman, but sadly that is not to be the case. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings on the recent announcement that Henry Cavill will not be returning back to his role as Superman that he began way back in Man of Steel from 2013. If I have time, I may do a retrospective on his complete role in terms of the character and why it didn't work or have the impacts that it should have done. Certainly as what we should have expected to see in terms of Superman, who is still the most iconic comic book character within all of popular culture. So look out for that coverage in the future. And of course, if there are any other news or announcements surrounding the DC Cinematic Universe and James Gunn's plans going forward, I will also cover that within the channel. And if you have any other suggestions in terms of movies or topics or any other issues within the entertainment industry that you'd like to see me cover, then also let me know within the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.